Hello, Bay Ridge. Welcome to another edition of After Hours. This will be the last After Hours for 2021 as we're here near Christmas and we'll be taking a week off. But today I wanted to take just a moment and talk a little bit more about embracing humility, particularly embracing humility in our arrogant age. This morning we had looked at Jesus as the humble king and how he was a picture of humility. And we saw that humility is critical for the Christian life. It's actually the path of joy, but it is not easy. And it's not easy for us for a number of reasons. I'm going to go through just a number of things here to help us think through it. But one of the reasons is because pride is key in the original sin of both Satan and of Adam. Many theologians point back and look at this interesting text in Isaiah chapter 28, Isaiah chapter 14, and Ezekiel 28. And in it, in Isaiah 14, we have this figure. It's the king of Babylon, but he says, I'm going to ascend up to heaven. I will be like the Most High. I will be exalted. And people see in it kind of a reflection that the king of Babylon seems to be being cast in terms of Satan, because it talks about him being in Eden, in the garden of God, and all these kind of things. And it seems pretty clear that Satan's original sin, what was at the heart of his rebellion, was pride. And then when he tempts Adam and Eve, it's the same temptation, because he tempts them and says, if you eat this, you will be like gods. Never mind, they were already as much like God as a creation could be. The temptation was to pridefully, arrogantly assert for ourselves the right to deity. And so pride lies down as the primal sin. Secondly, humility is difficult for us because pride is oftentimes seen as a root vice that feeds others. If you remember a couple of years ago, we looked at the 7 root vices and talked about them. And pride is one of those 7 root vices, but some theologians have actually taken it and made kind of pride the root that feeds the other 7. They break vainglory out as a specific type of pride, but they say that pride underlies them all, no matter what else we're going into, whether it's wrath or it's lust or whatever other sin it is, that if you check, you will probably find pride there underneath it. But in any event, whichever way you take it, pride is very clearly a root vice that feeds others. And so walking the way of humility is difficult for us because we have to get pretty deep down to uproot pride in our life. Thirdly, we find it difficult because in the ancient world, they did not even view humility as a virtue. And some of this has been left over for us. In the ancient world, they had 4 key virtues, which were temperance and prudence and courage and justice. And Christians often added to those the Christian virtues of faith, hope, and love. But humility was not even the list of virtues. And as we come down to our own time, we see with a philosopher like Nietzsche, who actually looked and said humility was weak. It was not a virtue. He wanted to speak of the manly virtues, and humility was the opposite of this. It oftentimes was seen as someone being weak and vulnerable. And I think that kind of lives in the air, that we're afraid to be humble. We don't see it oftentimes as a virtue, but rather as a sign of weakness. And that leads, all of those are kind of there in the background, so to speak, and it's come together in our age, so that our age is an age that is full of rage, it is full of cutting words, of canceling others, putting them down, and we do that by putting on a show of strength that we call strength, when in reality it's actually often nothing other than arrogance. It's nothing other than pride. And it's easy for you and I, even when we set up and we say, Lord, today I want to be humble. We can get online, we see what somebody else is doing, they make a statement we don't like, and we get swept up in it, and pretty soon we're embracing these biting words, these putting others down, somehow trying to make ourselves better by attacking the other, and we can get swept up in that. And we oftentimes feel like, well, look, I want to be humble, but if I'm humble, it's going to be viewed as weak. And that side, those people, that group, they're going to just crush us. They're going to roll over. They're going to take our country away. They're going to do this. They're going to do. And we think that I can't afford to be humble. I would like to, but if I have a posture of humility and meekness before them, they're going to roll over me. And that's become particularly prominent in our own age. But I want to say, in response to all of that, two things that we have to understand as believers. First, we have to embrace humility because it's the path of godliness, the path of joy, and the path for growth in the kingdom. See, as we saw today, Jesus is humble. That should settle it for us as believers. And we could ask, did men of power despise him and look down on him for his humility? They actually did. You can read it in the Gospels over and over again, they did. We also know that not only with Jesus, but even if you go back to Numbers chapter 12, we see that there's an editor has inserted a comment that Moses was the meekest man on earth. So, the great prophet in the Old Testament that was kind of the model for the other prophets, Jesus himself, they are people who walked in humility. And I would say that neither one of them were weak. They were actually made strong in their humility. And so we need to recognize this is the way we walk. But we also realize that, see, we don't experience joy down the path of arrogance and anger. That actually drains our joy. Taking a posture of being biting and putting down the other and feeling like I'm going to puff myself up and make myself something, that doesn't lead to joy. It actually diminishes our soul. It actually makes us less receptive for joy. And furthermore, it does not help promote the kingdom of God. We don't promote the kingdom by acting as the world does in anger and in arrogance, but rather as we walk the path of Jesus, the path of humility. As we walk in humility, the world may put us down. The world may take advantage of us. They may try to roll over, but know this, Jesus sees and he is going to reward our walking in humility, and that will actually help the kingdom of God grow. The kingdom does not grow through arrogance and pride. It grows through humble words and attitudes and acts of service. So if that's the first reason why we need to do this. Secondly, we need to just embrace humility in our actions today. How do we do this? Number one, here just a couple of simple things we can do. When we are wrong, confess simply and humbly that we were wrong. Boy, if you want to be countercultural, we live in this age of spin. And again, we see this so often with our politicians. I can't admit that I'm wrong. If I admit that I'm wrong, I'm going to be canceled. I'm going to be thrown aside. They're going to, it'll be the end of my political career. Well, you know what? It might be, but better to be humble and walking the path of Jesus, regardless of what our culture says or does, than walking the way of the world. So when we are wrong, we simply and humbly say, I was wrong. It's a great practice within our marriages, with our kids, in our relationships with one another. Secondly, when other people are wrong, be quick to forgive. See what happens in our culture because we're not humble. If anybody is wrong, we cancel them. We demand the pound of flesh, and at the end of the day, we still won't forgive. Well, we need to be the opposite. What if they have canceled us? What if they've canceled people like us? What do? We are quick to forgive. We forgive as the Lord forgave us. And then we always try to show humility and grace in our interactions with others. Again, rather than being angry, rather than being biting, rather than trying to put down, we show humility in the way we speak and talk and act towards others, both to their face and even behind their back. We walk the path of humility. For the path of humility is the path of godliness, the path of joy, and the path that will lead to the growth of the kingdom. Hope this is encouraging to us and how we can embrace humility in this age of arrogance and rage. And I hope that we'll all be able to take the time, if you are in the area, to come on Christmas Eve. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. Even if you can't, tune in. You can watch us on Facebook or YouTube and join in as we celebrate the coming of the humble King. And then I look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. God bless.